There's a final dirty move they use, the one you never see coming. You might think you've seen it all: ghosting, withdrawal, excuses. But what they do when they can't control you anymore, that's where the real damage begins. Today, we dive into the dark world of avoidant attachment. These are people who crave independence. They dislike emotional intimacy. They mask their fear by shutting down. This behavior often comes from early wounds where seeking closeness felt unsafe or untrustworthy. But when you break free, when you stop chasing, stop pleading, they hit you with one last trick, a power play disguised as love, a final dirty move that shakes your world. In this video, you'll learn who avoidants really are and why control is their crutch, the subtle dance of manipulation they play before the final blow, what that final dirty move really looks like, and why it works, how to spot it early before it pulls you under. What Jordan Peterson would say you must do to stand your ground, a clear step-by-step response plan to protect your mind and your dignity. The surprising truth, when they do this, it means something about you, not them. Stick around until the end, because I'm going to show you how recognizing this move can transform your life. How by facing it with courage, you finally reclaim your power. Welcome to Peterson's Pathway. I'm glad you're here. If you want more insight and clarity on navigating difficult relationships, hit subscribe and join the conversation. Before we talk about the mechanics of their last dirty move, we need to understand what avoidants really are. Picture someone who doesn't want, neediness. They think emotional closeness is for weak folks. They bottle things up. They withdraw, and they do it so well you'd think they were sociopathic, but they're not. They're just terrified. So here's the funny part. You meet them. They charmingly flirt. They seem confident. They even say, I'm independent. I've got it all figured out. But the moment feelings deepen, it's like a switch flips. Suddenly they need space. Space becomes code for get away or I'll suffocate. These dismissive avoidants learned early on that expressing needs doesn't work. Babies cry. Nobody comes. So what do? They shut the whole show down. Suppress emotion becomes their default mode. Skills they picked up in childhood, like hiding vegetables under their napkins, only it's their feelings under emotional napkins. They end up with this survival trick. Don't want it? Great. Never ask for it. Here's a scene from archives. Someone writes, instead of fear of abandonment, you have fear of intimacy. Instead of clinginess, you have complete withdrawal deactivation. That is your avoidant in a nutshell. They don't sprint away. They disappear in plain sight. As far as you know, they're there. Emotionally, not so much. Now, dismissives aren't emotionless automatons. On the contrary, they often feel deeply, but feelings are dangerous. So they suppress, they turn vulnerability into shame, they become masters of stoicism, they may even appear invulnerable, but that's exactly the illusion they're after. It's almost comedic. While everyone else is crying in group therapy, they're polishing a trophy for most self-sufficient human alive, and they love it, because to them, admitting need is like admitting to kryptonite. That trophy is their emotional armor. And here's the kicker. They don't avoid intimacy because they lack capacity to love. Quite the opposite. They can crave that intense, soul-shaking passion. But the moment commitment looms large, anxiety kicks in like clockwork. It's craving, then retreat, closeness, then coldness, pull in, pull away, emotional tug of war. The comic tragedy of it, you want closeness. They provide it just long enough to show they can before they retreat again. They reel you in, then bail. And you stand there like a confused goldfish wondering what just happened. And they never even spilled their emotional lunch. Now, defining avoidant behavior isn't just clinical jargon. It's crucial. Because if you don't see this suppression and withdrawal clearly, you'll misinterpret it. You'll blame them or yourself. Or worse, you'll think it's all your fault. But it's not. They learned this long before you arrived. It's a defensive ballet. And the moment you think, okay, we're connecting, they hit the brakes, withdraw, silence, and leave you wondering if you imagined the whole thing. That withdrawal is the heartbeat of avoidant behavior. I'll take control of the situation by cutting emotional connection. And once they do, they feel safe again. Because intimacy once meant pain, and pain for them equals danger. So every time they suppress emotion or step away, it's not malice, it's survival, it's an instinct. An emotional reflex built on unhealed wounds And until they heal, they'll keep repeating the cycle. That, my friend, is the foundation. The anatomical diagram of avoidant behavior. Now let's get ready to dissect their next move. When control starts slipping, what do they deploy next? Imagine you reach out, heart in hand, and they pull the rug every single time. Why? Because for them, closeness equals vulnerability. And in their mind, vulnerability is dangerous. That's not an opinion. That's their lived reality. They don't fear you. They fear what you represent. Connection, intimacy, exposure. And exposure emotionally is the very thing they were trained to avoid. Now, the avoidant doesn't need control because they're arrogant. No, they need it because they're afraid. And not just afraid like you and I get before a job interview. It's deeper than that. It's structural, formed in the earliest stages of development. A child crying, needing comfort, only to be met with coldness or chaos or unpredictability. So the child adapts, shuts off the signal. Don't ask, don't need, don't feel. That's the rule they learn. This becomes the blueprint of the avoidant adult. The moment you get too close, they pull back. The moment you say, I love you, they say, I need space. Because if they let go of control, even for a second, they risk being engulfed, consumed, lost. That's how it feels to them. Control isn't just about power. It's about psychological safety. And they have tactics, a playbook. It's not written down, but they follow it religiously. First is ghosting. They disappear not because they don't care, but because they care too much and don't know how to regulate it. Silence becomes their defense, but silence also becomes your prison. Let's pray. Then comes breadcrumbing. Now, breadcrumbing is perhaps one of the cruelest strategies. They'll send just enough messages, just enough interest to keep you emotionally tethered. A like on your photo, a late night thinking of you, a promise of a talk next week that never happens. Breadcrumbing isn't interest. It's strategic distance. It's a way of saying I'm still here without ever truly being there. You end up chasing shadows. And if breadcrumbing doesn't work, if you grow strong enough to stop chasing, that's when emotional distance sets in. They don't ghost anymore. They show up. Physically, they're there. Emotionally, they're gone. They might sit across from you at dinner and never ask you one meaningful question. You leave those conversations feeling empty, confused, sometimes even guilty, wondering if it was something you did. But the final move, the dirtiest one, comes when none of that works anymore. When ghosting, breadcrumbing, and cold silence no longer have power. When you stop playing their game, that's when they twist the frame. They distort reality. They gaslight. Gaslighting is subtle. It starts small. You mention something they said, they tell you it never happened. You express hurt. They say you're too sensitive. You ask for clarity. They accuse you of being dramatic. These aren't arguments. They're recalibrations of your truth. Suddenly you're doubting yourself, replaying conversations in your head, apologizing for things you never did. They also use blame. It's your fault they withdrew. It's your expectations that are too much. They frame your healthy needs as emotional immaturity. And because you care, because you're emotionally invested, you listen, you try harder, you accommodate, and that's exactly the trap. And finally, they minimize your emotions are not that serious. Your confusion is just overthinking. They shrink your experience until it feels invisible. And in that invisibility, they regain the power they were losing. Because when you doubt your own feelings, you turn to them for validation. And that brings them right back into control. So what's really going on here? At the surface, it looks like manipulation, and yes, it is, but underneath, it's fear, deep, unhealed fear. They don't do this because they're villains. They do it because they were once helpless, and now they've sworn never to be again. Closeness threatens that vow. Vulnerability threatens it even more. And when you stop dancing to their tune, they panic. The dirty move is the last effort to regain the upper hand. It's cruel, it's calculated, but it's also predictable. Once you've seen the pattern, control through distance, then through distortion, you can begin to detach, not in anger, not in bitterness, but with clarity. Because once you understand how deep this fear of intimacy goes, you stop trying to prove your worth to someone who's running from their own. Think about this. Someone slowly erodes your sense of truth until you can't trust your own mind. That's exactly why it works. They don't do it in a dramatic, obvious way. It's not an explosion, it's corrosion. Little by little, they challenge your memory. They poke holes in your perception. They reframe conversations until what you once knew with certainty becomes something you now doubt. You walk into the room with a clear mind, and you walk out unsure. Not because the truth changed, but because they chipped away at your grip on it. It works, and it works devastatingly well because the human psyche is not built to operate in constant contradiction. We crave consistency. We need to know that what we see, what we feel, what we remember matters, that it's real. And when someone repeatedly undermines that, when they tell you what you felt wasn't true or that what you heard wasn't said, you start bending reality just to keep the peace, just to make the relationship work. You tell yourself, maybe they're right, maybe I misunderstood, maybe I'm too sensitive. But ask yourself, when did that voice start? Was it always there? Or did it arrive after you started interacting with them? Because that's the core of the manipulation. They regain control, not by making you love them more or fear them more, but by making you doubt yourself more. When your own judgment is unstable, they don't need to control your decisions. You'll hand over that control willingly just to escape the anxiety of being wrong, of being too much, of being the problem. You start walking on eggshells, correcting your tone, adjusting your words, censoring your feelings. Not because they asked you directly, but because they trained you to, and that's how they win quietly, invisibly. So how do you recognize when this is happening? First, pay attention to confusion. If you're constantly revisiting conversations in your head, wondering, did I really say that? Did I really do that? That's a red flag. Healthy relationships don't leave you in constant self-doubt. They don't make you feel like you're losing your mind. Second, notice the shift in your confidence. Were you someone who once trusted your gut, made decisions easily, spoke up when something didn't sit right, and now you hesitate? You explain yourself. You apologize for having emotions. That erosion didn't come from nowhere. It was sculpted. Third, observe how your concerns are handled. If every time you bring something up, they flip the script, if suddenly you become the issue, that's manipulation. You say, I felt ignored when you didn't respond. And they say, you're always complaining. Or worse, you're making things up again. Your real lived emotions are reframed as flaws. That's not communication, that's control. And here's where the philosophy changes. What would I say to someone going through this? Stand your ground. That doesn't mean confront them with rage. That means clarify your own reality. Don't argue. Don't get sucked into their drama. Just fact check. Write things down if you have to. Save the messages, not to trap them, but to anchor yourself to say, no, I remember, I know what happened. Gaslighting only works if you let them edit the story. Keep your version alive. That's your power. And more importantly, stay calm, stay clear, stay firm. They want you reactive because when you're emotional, you're easier to control. But when you're composed, when you speak with quiet confidence, they can't find a crack to slip into. Let's say they twist your words. You don't need to shout, that's not what I said. You can respond, I remember what I said, and I'm comfortable with how I expressed myself. That's strength. That's clarity. That's the antidote to distortion. And when they minimize your feelings, when they say, it's not a big deal, or you're overthinking, you don't need to defend your right to feel, you can simply say, it matters to me. That's enough. That's drawing a boundary. And boundaries are kryptonite to those who thrive on control. I've said it before, if you can't stand up for your own experience, someone else will rewrite it for you, and they'll write you right out of it. You'll become the irrational one, the over-emotional one, the unstable one, and once they've convinced you of that, you're no longer a threat. You're an object they can manipulate at will. So you've got two jobs here. First, observe, not just them, but yourself. Notice how you feel after every conversation. You feel smaller, weaker, more confused. That's not love. That's psychological erosion. Second, choose reality. Choose your memory. Choose your truth. Even when it's inconvenient. Even when they deny it. Even when they threaten to leave. Because here's the deeper truth. You do not owe your sanity to someone who trades in distortion. You do not owe peace to someone who profits from your silence. Your reality is sacred. Protect it like your life depends on it, because emotionally it does. And if they walk away because you stood your ground, Let them. That's not loss. That's liberation. So don't argue. Don't panic. Don't explain your every move. Just remember who you are and what you know. Quietly, powerfully, unshakably. That's the kind of strength that breaks their final illusion that they ever had control in the first place. Pause. That's the first word I want you to hear when everything in you is screaming, because in the moment the gaslight flickers, before you respond, you pause and observe. You don't react. You witness what's happening to your body, your heartbeat, your temperature. That surge of emotion is their invitation for you to stumble. Don't take it. Pause. Watch their words. Feel your breath. Note the slight trembling of your chest. That's your truth stirring, but also note the calm, rational mind underneath. That's your strength. Second, don't mirror negativity. Gaslighting is emotional contagion. They throw you to the wolves of doubt, blame, confusion. And if you retaliate, chronically defensive, angry, overwhelmed, you just become part of their script. Mirroring negativity hands them what they want. Dramatic chaos, where they regain control. Instead, you respond with neutrality, like water flowing around a rock. You acknowledge the reality they're pitching without adopting it. That's not how I remember it. But I appreciate your perspective, just enough to disarm, just enough to stay above the storm. Third, affirm your reality calmly. And I don't mean lecturing, no declarations of I will not be controlled. I mean simple, quiet statements. I remember saying that. I feel that. That's my experience. Re-anchoring yourself in your memory, anchoring your truth in your voice. Because once you say it calmly, without emotion, without aggression, you're no longer reactive. You're undeniable. It's not confrontation. It's clarity. And if they challenge your calm, you don't over-explain. You don't scream volume. You restate, I experienced this. I stand by this. No echo chamber. No pity party. Unshakable calm. Fourth, seek external support or evidence if needed. You're not alone. Reality is collective, not individual. If your gut is telling you something's off, don't isolate. Talk to someone you trust. Show them what's being said. Compare notes. Ask, do you hear any gaslighting here? A neutral observer can restore your compass. And evidence, like messages, emails, texts, can serve as your anchor in storms of distortion. It's not about ambush, it's about truth. Now let's look at this roadmap in action. Picture it. They twist something you said. You feel that tug like your stomach's dropping. Step one, pause. You feel the weight of your blood. You sense the urge to defend. Don't observe, breathe. Second, don't mirror negativity. You could fire back with aggression. You walk away instead, literally or emotionally. I'll think about that. A pause is a reset button. Third, affirm your reality calmly. You could say, I hear what you're saying. For me, the facts are X, Y, and Z. You're not lecturing or preaching, you're stating. Fourth, seek external support or evidence. You show your rational recollection and say, here's what's in our chat. I'd like us both to look. And if they resist, you've still done your part, kept truth intact, remained firm, and refused to be trapped by distortion. That roadmap isn't a checklist. It's a posture. It's a posture of truth, courage, and stoic clarity. It's how you refuse to be manipulated when the gaslight turns on. It's how you honor your reality even when someone else seeks to redefine it. And let me tell you, living this way isn't weakness. It's not avoidance. It's not passive. It's an active stance, a stance rooted in self-respect and self-sovereignty. And that, my friend, is exactly what pulls you out of the gaslight shadow and into the light of your own clarity. You matter to them, and here's the stunning irony, that might be part of the problem. Because when they deploy the final dirty move, gaslighting, blame, minimizing, it's not about love, it's about power. They're signaling that you hold real influence in their world. And believe me, that's both revealing and alarming. Think about it. They wouldn't go to all this trouble if you were someone they didn't care about. If you were a stranger or someone inconsequential, they'd move on, they'd ghost and leave it at that. But when they twist reality, they step back in, they re-engage, they double down. That means you're still present in their mind. You're someone they feel they must dominate or secure again. This isn't affection. It's not romantic admiration. It's a fight for control over your impact on their psyche. They're not declaring love. They're expressing fear. fear that you might detach for good, or worse, bring their emotional scaffolding crumbling down. That fear drives them to reassert dominance, rewrite the narrative, and keep you tethered. So yes, you do matter. That matters. That's actually a gift in disguise. The harsh way they reach out, trying to regain purchase on your mind, it means your presence penetrates deeper than they dare admit. You're significant. That significance frightens them, and so they scramble to reconfigure the dynamic. It's both a sign of your value and their insecurity. Consider something like this. Two people meet in a landscape of emotional neutrality. Nothing is at stake. No one gets gaslit. No one attempts power plays. Why? Because neither one matters enough to the other. Conflict requires fuel, control requires risk, and risk only enters when there's emotional currency to be lost. What they're really communicating is, you're too important for me to shrink. So I'm going to twist reality and claim the upper hand. That, in a twisted way, is an admission that you are a force in their life, but they fear that force. That's why they attack it. If they loved it, they'd embrace it. If they respected it, they'd negotiate. Instead, they suppress, and that's what we're witnessing. So take note, this isn't about one person misbehaving. This is a signpost. It's not a testament of their love. It's evidence of your power and your value and their perception that you might at any moment move beyond them. Here's where clarity walks in. You recognize, yes, their manipulation is wrong. Yes, it can harm you, but underneath it is a message: you matter. You're felt. You're present. That's why it evokes this primal defensive response in them. And once you understand that, once you see their move, not just as hostile, but as a desperate bid to hold on to relevance, you're no longer just reacting. You're responding with informed choice. You stand in truth. You hold your ground because you recognize your power and you refuse to let them signal control with your reality as a bargaining chip. You don't own their confusion. You don't internalize their narrative, and that is transformative. You become the person who realizes they gaslit because you mattered. You weren't the problem. No, you were the variable they feared losing. And that's something few get to realize, let alone embrace. In a strange way, their move becomes a signal that you've stepped into power, that your voice, your feelings, your presence, they're real. They matter, and they matter enough to provoke such a sophisticated resistance. That's your final message. Don't shrink back. Don't read weakness into this. Read significance. Read that your presence matters. Read that boundaries are warranted. Read that you deserve clarity, honesty, reality, and recognize that their move, however toxic, is acknowledging your worth, even if they can't admit it directly. So let their dirty moves stand as what it is, a last-ditch, fear-driven attempt to reclaim your power over them. And know this, no tactic, even the darkest one, diminishes your value. Quite the opposite. It points to it. Let's take it deeper, right into your soul. The final dirty move was never about breaking you. It was about keeping you small, keeping you confused, keeping you questioning your worth. Because as long as you're tangled in doubt, you're easier to steer, easier to bend, easier to control. But something inside you refused to stay bent. Something inside you saw through the haze. Maybe not all at once. Maybe it took time. But you saw it, and that seeing was the beginning of your liberation. Let's be honest. These games aren't just childish. They're dangerous. They erode your self-trust. They slowly separate you from your instincts. And over time, you start to believe that you're the problem, that you're too much, too emotional, too sensitive. But none of that was ever true. The truth is, you were the one holding the light, and they couldn't stand the reflection. See, people who rely on manipulation to stay close are terrified of honesty, terrified of intimacy. They'll trade connection for control every single time. And when control slips away, they reach for distortion. But here's the secret they don't want you to know. Clarity is your power. It always has been. Once you name what's happening, it loses its grip. Once you stop arguing with fantasy and start standing in truth, the whole game changes. They lose access to you, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, mentally, because you no longer live in their story. You live in your own. And your story isn't small. It's not made of gaslight and guilt. It's made of resilience. It's made of strength that was forged in silence. It's made of every moment you doubted yourself and still chose to keep going. Every time you cried in the dark and wiped your own tears. That's not weakness. That's unbreakable. What you've done is one of the hardest things a human being can do. You've untangled yourself from someone else's chaos without becoming chaotic yourself. You've walked through emotional war zones and held on to your dignity. That's what warriors do, not with fists, but with clarity and calm. So what now? Now you reclaim your space. You rebuild your trust in your own voice. You stop second-guessing your gut. You stop apologizing for existing, and you start living as if your truth matters, because it does. You are not here to be controlled. You are not here to play small to make someone else feel big. You are here to stand tall, speak clearly, and move forward with strength that doesn't need to shout. So when they twist your words, when they play the victim, when they spin the narrative one last time, remember this: their tactics don't define you. Your response does. And when your response is silence, strength, and self-respect, you win every time. Let this be the moment you mark the line in the sand, the moment you decide that no one gets to rewrite your truth. From here on, you live in clarity. You speak with intention, you love with discernment, and you walk with power. And if this video spoke to you, if it gave you that little spark of truth you've been searching for, then do something for yourself. Like this video. Let it be your statement. Let it say, I see it now. I'm done with the games. And subscribe to our channel, Peterson's Pathway, where we talk about truth, power, and healing the mind so you can live in alignment with who you were always meant to be. No drama, no noise, just clarity and courage. Because the path ahead, it's yours now. You own it, not them. Not their tactics, not their story. You